Our guest today is Mike Mutnansky, talk show host for WEI's Mutt in Bradford and WGAM in New Hampshire. Welcome, Mike, to our show.
Good evening, guys and gals. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Good.
Excellent.
So I want to start by talking a little basketball with the Celtics. They obviously lost in Game 7, which was disappointing, but what do they have to do to remain a contender for next year?
Oh, they got to figure out who their coach is going to be. You know, listening to Doc today on WEEI, he doesn't sound like he's completely committed to coming back here to coach this team next year, and if he's leaning one way or another, he did a nice job of not letting the cat out of the bag. And so I think you got to figure out who the coach is going to be. There's been rumors about the GM, Danny Ainge, potentially going to Phoenix, and then you got a bunch of players that potentially could not be here. Paul Pierce could opt out of his contract. Ray Allen's a free agent. There's a lot of ducks they've got to sort of get in a row before you try to piece together what next year's team is going to look like. But after a great run this year, I think the only certainty is that next year's Celtics team is going to look a lot different.
Mike, do you think Steve Smith is soft off the field?
Steve Smith from the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah.
Well, the break arm.
From what I've seen of Steve Smith on ESPN and the NFL Network, he is one of the toughest guys in the NFL. I mean, his size, he's not the prototypical wide receiver. I mean, he's pretty similar to Wes Welker in terms of size and physical build, yet I think he's pretty tough, takes a lot of big hits, makes plays down the field. I know he broke his arm today. He was playing flag football, as you guys were talking about, and somebody threw a ball over his head, and he dove for it and tried to brace himself and stuck his arm into the ground and kind of broke his arm. But I don't think he's going to miss any time next year. I think he's a tough guy. Why? You don't think he's tough?
Well, I'm just saying, I was just thinking, we didn't really get the clear story of what really happened, how he broke his arm. But, so thanks for answering my question. Dylan?
No, I think, it's interesting in that his team that pays him millions of dollars is okay with him playing flag football in the off season. These guys all have contracts and stipulations where they can't ride motorcycles, they can't go skydiving, whatever it is, and yet Steve Smith was allowed to play flag football. I read some of his agent's comments, and it sounds like they're pretty embarrassed that he broke his arm this way. But I still think he's a tough guy. I think it's a situation where he tried to brace himself and broke his arm, and if he misses some time next year, there'll be a lot of Carolina Panther fans angry that he was playing flag football in June and not getting ready for the upcoming season.
Well, yeah, Matt Moore and Jimmy Clausen are probably angry.
Those are the guys throwing the football, absolutely.
So, Mike, the Red Sox are actually only one game back of the Yankees in first place. Do you think that by the end of the season they can pull it off to win the wild card or maybe even win the division? And how do you think they can do good on the up ahead in the road too?
Oh, this is should be a fun road trip coming up. I don't love interleague play, but the pitchers they're going to face here in terms of Ebaldo Jimenez for Colorado and Timmy Lincecum come out there in San Francisco should be a lot of fun. I can't believe the Red Sox cut an 8.5-point deficit, 8.5 game deficit down to a game in less than a month. I mean, that's unheard of, especially given how good their division is. So if they can cut this much into the lead, they can get themselves a game back for the day after Father's Day without Ellsbury outside of 9 games this year, with Josh Beckett giving them nothing. Barring any sort of injuries, I truly believe they can compete with Tampa and New York for either the AL East or second place, which I guess is officially going to be the AL wild card this year.
Well, those rumors you talked about, Danny Ainge going to Phoenix, sound pretty crazy. But I wanted to get back to the Celtics for a second because
Sure.
I think that all these rumors that happened right after they made such a great run to the championship are a bit overstated. I mean, I don't think they would have just a huge shakeup right after they got all the way to Game 7 and came that close to winning the championship. I honestly don't think there's going to be that many changes. What do you think about that?
Well, the Ainge one is the hardest one to swallow because he's part of Celtic lore. He's helped them, win a championship and rebuild this team. Made the Garnett trade that really put this team, back at a championship level. That to me, guys, is the one that doesn't make a lot of sense. Doc Rivers has Doc's got a couple of kids that are very good high school players at the AAU and high school levels, and I could see him stepping away from the game for a couple of years, watching his sons grow up a little bit, going into TV and making some money that way, and coming back to coach at some point. But in terms of the team, yeah, I think Ray Allen's contract is up. Paul Pierce might decide with the CBA the way it is that, hey, if I don't get my money now, I may never get it. So I do think that there could be some major changes on this team. And in fact, I'd be more surprised if the team looks a lot like this year's team than being completely blown up. I think there's a better chance that there's a lot of changes than just a couple of changes.
I feel that the Celtics next year will still be competitors for the NBA Finals because I don't see Danny Ainge leaving, and I think Doc Rivers, I think he's waiting on what his team to do to make his decision. Danny Ainge there was an article written that said Danny Ainge next year wants the core group of players to stay together, and I think so does Doc Rivers. I think if Paul Pierce opts out, if Ray Allen leaves, if Kendrick Perkins can't get healthy, I don't think Doc Rivers will see any motivation to come back and play. But if they're all healthy, if they're all still on the team, I think he'll come back and can be the coach of this team. Now, if Paul Pierce opts out of his contract and if they don't sign Ray Allen, then maybe they can make a free agent pool, sign a Joe Johnson, maybe sign a Carlos Boozer. So I think that either way, they'll be very competitive next year. How do you feel about that?
I think that absolutely who's ever here realizes, and with Wick Grosbeck as the owner here, they're always going to be competitive. I mean, even if you told me that they have Perkins and Rondo and Garnett, and that's their core, they'll be a competitor for a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think the bigger question is, guys, what's the Eastern Conference going to look like? Where's LeBron going to go? Who is Tom Thibodeau going to recruit to play with Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah? Where does Chris Bosh go? Where does Dwayne Wade go? I mean, this could be a super conference here in the East if all these free agents stay in the Eastern Conference like we've never seen before. And it might be you might be talking about beating 2 championship competitive teams just to get back to the NBA final. You might have to go through a LeBron again and a Dwight Howard with a Dwayne Wade. The Eastern Conference, if these guys stay here, is going to be as competitive as any conference we've seen in sports in a long, long time. And I think that if the Celtics have even Perk, Rondo, and Garnett, they'll be in the conversation. But I'm very curious to see where LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and Boozer and Joe Johnson end up. Because if it's all in the Eastern Conference, it'll be a gauntlet for 82 games. It'll be crazy.
Michael, about the NBA draft, who do you think the Celtics are going to pick at number 19, a guard or a forward?
I would love to see a shooting guard, guys, and I'm way far behind on my NBA draft preparations. I usually love following the NBA draft as a college basketball nut, and I know a couple of guys, but with the way the Red Sox are playing and with the way that the Celtics played right up to the end, I haven't looked at it a lot, but if you're asking me, shooting guard, scoring type, I think they're going to, this is going to sound silly, but they're going to miss Bill Walker. I mean, Bill Walker would have been a great part of this team off the bench next year with Tony Allen to give them some athleticism and scoring. They traded him. I'd love to see them replace a Bill Walker type shooting guard, small forward, guy who can score the basketball a little bit. If they're drafting at 19 and a guy like that's available, I'd sign for that today. Let's do it.
I think James Anderson, I agree, shooting guard of Oklahoma State. So, Dylan?
So what's more knowledgeable, being a sports writer or being a talk show host?
Oh, my gosh. What kind of question is that?
I don't know.
Of course.
The people in the studio told me to ask you that.
Of course it's talk show host. Sports writer, schmorts writer. These guys and their internet blogs these days, no. To be full-time, have a full-time job in sports, no matter what side of it you're in, TV, radio, internet, traditional print, even magazine, you better have a knowledge base. More importantly, you better love sports because, you're living it day in and day out. It becomes less of a recreational thing where you sit down and watch the Red Sox, and it becomes a job. And so whether you're on the print side or the radio or TV side, you got to love it, and you got to love talking sports or writing sports every single day. And I think no matter what side you're on, you better be pretty darn knowledgeable. Your readers and viewers and listeners will find out pretty quickly.
thanks for joining us this segment. Can you stay on the line for next segment?
Yeah, what do you guys need? Let's go.
Okay, cool. So to all our viewers, stay on the show for next segment. We'll be right back.